Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. I'm your returning host, Patrick Smith, as we cast our eyes to Liverpool's trip to the South Coast on Saturday to take on Bournemouth. Joining me on today's pod, we have a trio from Echo Towers. Up first, we've got Liverpool FC writer Theo Squires. Welcome along, Theo. How have you enjoyed the week after Liverpool's 7-0 humiliation of Man United?
It's been lovely, hasn't it? Being able to just have constant digs at United day after day. It's been something I've been waiting for all season, because regular listeners will know how much I love to tooth at opposition players, teams and whatnot. So it's been a great week for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I said I wasn't going to mention it on the pod, so we'll just do it for the intros for now. We've also got women's football writer Beth Lindop alongside us. Beth, have you now recovered from the celebrations after Sunday's win?
I have. You know what? I'm a bit disappointed we're not discussing Man United, because I'm not sure I've ever done a blood red with only joining the season where we've won a game. So I'm disappointed that I missed that one on Monday. But no, I'm good. Just about recovered.
Yeah, I wish we could. We spent hours and hours on the topic. I mean, I'd love to revel in it some more, but I've been given the editorial guidance not to. I mean, Rich, you're rounding off our panel. You're Echo Sports trends writer. You've seen a lot more Liverpool games than me. Where does Sunday's 7-0 win rank among all those for you?
Pretty high, to be honest with you. I had my lad with me as well, which helps. So I don't think he was expecting to see a 7-0 victory. I was like, well, yeah, they're not that rare, not that common. Sorry. So yeah, it's
say that we've done a 7-1, a 9-0, and a 7-0 this season.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between a 9-0 against Bournemouth and a 7-0 against United. Is there? No disrespect to Liverpool's next opponents, but yeah, it was very, very enjoyable, and I'm happy to dine out on it for a bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, your son's very lucky to be grown up with this generation to watch as well, because when I was his age, I think it was the Roy Hodgson era, so he can count himself very lucky on that one. But you mentioned there that
you needed at least 6 pints pre-game to watch the Hodgson era, mate. So if that's not an advert for teenage drinking, I don't know what is, Pat.
I mean, I would have been 10 at the time, so I think I'd have probably been in hospital if I'd have had that. But anyway, let's move on then. I mean, we mentioned the 9-0 win there, Theo, didn't you? The attention now is going to turn to Bournemouth. Liverpool humiliated them like they did Man United way back in August in that 9-0 win. What are you expecting on this occasion, though?
Not a 9-0 victory. It's that horrible Saturday lunchtime kickoff. It's a long way to go. Weather's probably not going to be the best, is it, getting down there from all the snow we've had this morning? I know Doyley and Gorsty, they're having to set off probably in the next hour or so, maybe, well, definitely this afternoon, which is why they're not on the podcast today, because they're having to stay overnight with the kickoff time. And it's one where Bournemouth in those horrible kickoff times, it always feels like a game where Liverpool could slip up. But then at the same time, Liverpool in confidence when they go there, they batter them. And Mohamed Salah seems to score like 2 goals, 3 goals. So I'd like to think Liverpool, full on confidence after dismantling United, can go and get a victory there. But then there's always that anxiety when you see such a long away day on a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday. Fingers crossed they're not too sleepy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Beth, it is that dreaded 12:30 Saturday kickoff as well, especially as an away game. We saw it at one time this season, didn't we? Liverpool beating a rival in Manchester City and then facing Forest, a so-called lesser side, in that 12:30 kickoff. Are you similarly concerned about Bournemouth this time, or do you think Liverpool have enough to power through them?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a cause for concern, as you said. I think that Manchester City one, it's a real sort of parallel, I guess, to the situation sort of Liverpool have been in this week, obviously buoyed by an absolutely massive result over a huge rival. And I think after that Manchester City win, I think it was Doyley wrote a piece about sort of saying, you know, Liverpool now don't have a choice. They have to sort of kick on. And it felt like that at that moment in time. And that's how it feels now. And obviously, you know, back in October, that didn't prove true. You know, unfortunately, we've seen another string of poor results since that Manchester City defeat, and you really sort of, you want to think that this is a turning point now, and after not just the United game, you know, the derby and a few other results as well, you would like to think that Liverpool are back and really, you know, on the top 4 charge. But we've seen a number of times this season a couple of false dawns for Liverpool, so we've just got to hope that won't be the case on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, what's your take on it? Bournemouth had a they had a very good performance at top of the league Arsenal last weekend, didn't they? Very unlucky, as in the words of Jurgen Klopp, to concede that last-minute goal to lose it. I mean, they went ahead, I think it was after 10 seconds or something ridiculous, wasn't it? Now, do you think Liverpool are going to have a similarly poor start? Because Bournemouth clearly showing they can start well. Liverpool at times, particularly in the kickoffs, have shown they start poorly. Is that going to be the major concern for the Reds at the weekend?
Well, they're absolutely capable of a bad start, as you say, they've proven it quite a few times this season. I think if you look at United's rather unsatisfactory result for them at Anfield on Sunday, it was a bit of a case of after the Lord's Mayor show, wasn't it? You know what I mean? They've gone to Wembley, they've won a trophy and rocked up at Anfield, probably in a pretty chipper move and left with the pants down. And Liverpool just need to be a little bit careful after winning 7-0 that the same sort of thing doesn't happen to them. Obviously, riding the crest of a wave all of a sudden, and then you go in somewhere where, let's face it, they'll be expected to get 3 points, but it doesn't always work out like that. I had a couple of quid on Bournemouth the other week against Newcastle to get a draw, which they came up trumps with remarkably. So they're not without merit. Bournemouth, they can cause a few problems, and I think Klopp's alluded to that himself this week, that he's not expecting an easy ride. I still expect Liverpool to come away with the win, but I'm certainly not expecting to see a demolition job along the lines of which we enjoyed at least in the second 45 minutes last weekend.
Yeah, hopefully some more tips from you, Rich, throughout the show there. Lovely little one for us there. From kickoff, I hope Liverpool just drop all 10 outfielders back, because Bournemouth have started doing these lovely routines at the start of matches, so hopefully they keep an eye out for that one. But Theo, Bournemouth's typically a place Liverpool have struggled at times playing, haven't they? I mean, it's a small ground, it's quite intimidating, especially in the early kickoff. I mean, is there any historical reason why Liverpool could struggle, do you think? Shown it in the past, there's been games where Bournemouth have had that amazing comeback and Liverpool had to. I think they're in the green kit, weren't they? I think back to the Coutinho days. There's been a couple of belter matches down there, hasn't there?
There has, but I think you're at risk of doing what you did with Firmino the other week, saying against United, where it's only just one game. I was thinking the same as you, that Bournemouth hasn't been a happy hunting ground. But other than that 4-3 in 16-17, and the toxic thunder, wasn't it? That lime green kit. We've had a 4-0 victory, a 4-0 victory, a 3-0 victory. So maybe it's not that bad after all.
Me doing my research as ever, Theo.
I think Naby Keita had the game of his life last time. Was that been what? The title winning year? I didn't realise it was that long since we've been at Bournemouth away. But then that was Liverpool at the peak of their powers, wasn't it, when they were putting 4 and 3 past them? But then if a Liverpool team with like Fabio Carvalho in midfield could put 9 past them at Anfield, maybe we can be optimistic there as well. But it's one where you've had one bad result against them. That always does stick in the mind a little bit. But it's a long time ago now. It's 6 years, 7 years? Yeah, there can't be too many players left at Liverpool were involved in that. Henderson, Milner. So it's not going to have too much impact. You hope they're professional enough to just build on the 7-0 victory, full of confidence, start well, no slow starts here, get an early goal and make Bournemouth look like what the side they are, a championship side that will be going down this season.
Oh, scathing words there, Theo. It's not happened yet, but I mean, yeah, I similarly think they will go down. You've nicely led on to my next question about Naby Keita mentioning his masterclass. Beth, Naby's returned to training this week after a couple of weeks out with a minor injury. Is there any chance that he's going to get back into this midfield? Because before his injury, he might have had a shout, but now the form of Fabinho, Harvey Elliott playing well against Man United. Is there any case for Naby Keita getting away back into this side, do you think?
No. Well, there is a case, obviously. I think, this Liverpool side, yes, they were exceptional last weekend. They were great in the derby, but they're still a long way off being at the best. And we've seen Fabinho obviously struggling for form at times this season. So I don't think it's a case that these players are all completely undroppable. But I just think sort of that Naby Keita sort of first half against Crystal Palace was one of the worst I've seen it in a Liverpool shirt. And not just him, to be fair, that the whole team were culpable that day. It was a really, really dismal stalemate. And I guess another reason not to get too ahead of ourselves after that United win, because it was only, a couple of weeks ago that we had that draw at Palace. So I think we've exhausted the conversation, haven't we, really, about Naby Keita, and I'd love him to kick on for us. And, he's had flashes of brilliance, as Theo mentioned, that game at Bournemouth a couple of years ago. I think he set up Mo for one and scored one as well, I think, if I remember rightly. And again, that game at Old Trafford last season was probably the best I've seen him play. But I think he's his time at Liverpool is probably coming to an end, and I think there's a case for just sticking with the midfield, that more sort of workman-like midfield of Fabinho, Henderson, Bajcetic, and I don't see him really sort of establishing himself in this side before the end of the season.
Yeah, even as someone myself who's defended Keita at times, I think he has shown some relatively good performances. I'm not sure his last few months in Liverpool shirt are going to be positive ones, particularly for him. I mean, Rich, what's your take on it? What would you do with Keita's situation? Klopp was asked in his press conference today what the situation is with his contract. He sort of refused to comment. What would you do, Rich?
Well, I think since January, he would have been free to talk to other clubs. And I would hope that's exactly what he's been doing, because his Liverpool career is coming to an end. He's not really met the hype, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's they paid decent money for him. He came with a lot of expectation. He looked great on YouTube, let's be honest. But he just hasn't done those things. And I don't know. I don't want to question a player's character or anything like that. But I've never really been able to take to him in the way I have to other players that have come in, and he's obviously not been helped by an unbelievable injury record. I can't remember what it was, but I had to review it for a piece a couple of months back, and all I can say is it was very long. So there's a lot of things he's been out with, all different types of bits, like the Tin Man really just needs completely rebuilding, I think. But the fact of the matter is that when he has played, he just hasn't done it on any sort of level of consistency. And I think when the chips are down, he's not really the man you're looking to. So yeah, I think it's a case of shake hands and bid farewell. Best of luck to him at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, Theo, you're someone who loves a chat on Naby Keita. You've had some interactions with our listeners in the past, haven't you? What's your take on the Keita situation?
I think the fact that he wasn't in the match day squad for the United game says it all. Like Jurgen Klopp is looking to the future, and that's why likes of Curtis Jones are on that bench ahead of him. I think if we look at players who are coming to the end of their contracts in the past under Klopp, they fall into two camps when they hit the final few months of the contract. It's either business as normal, we need you, do a job for us. Gini Wijnaldum, Emre Can before injury, and he still came back for the Champions League final. And we're expecting to see the same from Roberto Firmino in the next couple of months. Certainly seems like we will off the back of that cameo appearance against United. But then there are all the others that are just pushed out the door quietly, that you're still around the camp, you're still training, but you're not really getting game time unless you really, really need it. I'm thinking like Adam Lallana there. He was kept around, wasn't he? Had his brief extension because of the pandemic, but I think he was only on the bench for the one game after that, and that was against Chelsea just because they were lifting the trophy, so he was that little bit more involved. They didn't want to jeopardise his chance of getting a move elsewhere. You think for the likes of Daniel Sturridge or Alberto Moreno, they didn't really feature much towards the end of their contracts. Even Divock Origi last year, I know he came on against Southampton and he had a couple of substitute appearances here and there, but then he had a little knock and they thought, right, you're just going to finish the season quietly, you're not involved for the Champions League final. The fact that Keita was left out and Oxlade-Chamberlain's in this bracket as well, he was left out, having been phased out quietly last year as well. It does look like it's a future without them. Naby Keita's had a very up and down Liverpool career. I didn't realise until I was doing a piece the other day, if you look at the 2020-21 season, we had that absolute stinker away at Real Madrid and was taken off just before half time. I think that was in March time. I think that might have been his last appearance of the season, or he only played like one or two more games after that. He barely got a sniff. So it was a surprise when he got back into the team and he was so good last year. But he had contract, a good couple of years left on his contract then to give him the benefit of the doubt to get back into contention. Here it's the beginning and the end for him. There's no Champions League football realistically for him to play in now. They're probably going to get knocked out at the Bernabeu. So you've got, 12, 14 Premier League games left, something like that. You just go with your strongest team. You rotate the midfield if you really have to because of injuries or if players are tired and they come out. And we do know the games are going to come thicker and faster because of this season World Cup and everything. But Keita is not the player you turn to. You would much rather see this four of Bajcetic, Henderson, Fabinho, Elliott and Thiago when he comes back. Those are the players you rotate between. And then you look to the future and it's Curtis Jones. It's the same reason why Artemelo hasn't played in the Premier League yet. You do not have a future at Liverpool. Why give you the minutes when we could give it to someone who's younger and is going to be part of the club's future?
Yeah, Absolutely, couldn't agree more, and that sums up perfect. I think the thing with Keita as well, you mentioned the Champions League games there. In my opinion, he's always done well in European matches. I think that's where he's thrived, where he's not been up against like-for-like midfielders you sometimes are more frequently up against in the Premier League. He can dominate those slower players in Europe, but yeah, obviously I don't think he's going to get many chances to do that for the rest of the season, unfortunately for him. But Beth, let's stay with the midfield. Klopp mentioned this press conference that Luis Diaz, who we'll touch on, and Thiago will return after the international break. Now, the midfield has been much improved in the past month. Is there now a case where Thiago might not even be in a starting place in that team? Because, Henderson, Elliott, Fabinho, Bacetic all playing so well. Is there now a case where Thiago maybe has to settle for a rotation role?
Yeah, I think quite possibly. I mean, we're all aware of Thiago's quality. He hasn't had the best season, but you could say that for every single player really, bar probably Alisson. So, I think he definitely will have more of a role than Naby Keita. I think when he comes back in, we know what he can do, and I think certainly it will suit him better if he's coming into a Liverpool side that are more confident, that are more dominant. The one we're more used to seeing. I think when sort of Thiago was featuring week in, week out, earlier in the year, Liverpool were really, really struggling, and he's not necessarily the sort of player who's going to turn a game around by himself. He's someone who can obviously dictate play and things like that, and sort of slow the game down and play at his pace, but not necessarily someone who's going to be the catalyst to change a game. So I think he definitely does have a role when he comes back into the fold, but I certainly don't think it will be a case of him starting every single week. I think now it's just down to who's performing the best. I think he's obviously probably the one who's cemented his spot more than the rest. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see sort of how Thiago is sort of eased back in when he comes back into the fold.
Yeah, it really is an interesting one. I mean, Rich, as I mentioned there, Luis Diaz also coming back. Is there now even a case in the attack when Luis Diaz might not get a starting place? I mean, the form of Nunez and Gakpo and their newly formed partnership on that, Nunez on the left, Gakpo down the middle. I mean, Luis Diaz is going to have to really fight to get his place back in the way they're currently playing, isn't he?
Yes, but I think we're only really looking at the last couple of games. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about Luis Diaz's stock rising purely by not playing. But that shows you how quickly things turn in football, don't they? That's probably why it's a game that so many people love, because things can change in an instant. As we've seen, we were, questioning Gakpo's suitability. I can't say it, mate. If you think Beth can't say Bacetic, you want to see me trying to say Gakpo?
You just done it again.
Cody. Yeah,
Dutch fella.
Cody's settled in now. He looked a bit quiet, didn't he? Those first sort of 5 games, almost a little bit cumbersome. He didn't look like what was really being put forward as this sort of replacement for Firmino. But it's, they're never going to be the same players. But certainly the last couple of games, he's looked far better, and he looked absolutely superb against United. That was like, wow, this is the player we thought we were getting, and Nunez the same. Although I still think Nunez wasn't. I don't think he was great in that first half against United. He certainly was in the second. But he's a player who I've come to accept is going to be different to Sadio Mane. You're not replacing like for like here. You're bringing in a different set of qualities, and of course he's full of energy. He must be an absolute nightmare to deal with on the pitch, Nunez. And I have grown fonder of him as time's gone by. But let's not forget, Diaz came in and just hit the ground running, didn't he? When he signed, he's looked absolutely phenomenal. Ultra talented footballer, and when the dust settles, I would expect him to be in that front three, and it'll be down to the others to jostle for places within the side. And I think it was help if you kind of work out which of those players is more comfortable deputising for Salah as well, because Salah plays a hell of a lot of football, doesn't he? He seems to be the one consistent all the time, even when his form dipped off a little bit. So you definitely need more than one option on that flank as well. But what I think was sort of a key point, which Beth alluded to, was that when she was talking about the midfield, is more that you'd be picking a side now based on the players who are in form, rather than what they may have done a little bit recently with injury problems, which is picking on who's available. And that is a stronger position to be in, and that should drive good competition from the players that know they're going to be there for the long term. And with that, you're just going to get better performances. And at least now Liverpool have got something to build on now with this decent run in the Premier League. And obviously confidence should be through the roof after such a great result against, what is now a pretty good United side. So, it won't be easy for Diaz, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing him back on the pitch.
We were debating this in the office the other week, and it's going to be, depends which Luis Diaz comes back. Like, he's had a bad knee injury, came back and then had a little bit of another niggle in it, didn't he? Or wasn't quite right, so he had to have the surgery. It's how that impacts him as a player. Like, if he loses a yard of pace and he's not as explosive as he used to be, then it's, well, how do you adjust your game? Are you still going to be this player that made that electric impact when you first joined the club and you are one of the first names on the team sheet? It's why we're mid-March now. He's not going to be back until April. Those 3 games in April, where it's City, Chelsea, Arsenal, you're not throwing him in significantly in any of them. And then it's just gradually easing him back in, let him have a full pre-season and then see what sort of player he still is. And that's when you get the best out of him. And then you see who's in your strongest starting 3. But it is an interesting debate to have, because you look at them, they've got so many players that are favoured towards this left side of the attack, and you can throw Jota in this as well. It's why Firmino's sort of become the fall guy, the one who's at the bottom of the pecking order, because it's the middle or nothing for him, whereas all the others can play in 2 or 3 different positions. At least with the right wing, they've got Elliott, who can deputise long-term, Cade Gordon, if he gets back from injury and can find his best form, Ben Doak. So there's the long-term options there. And it's what they want to do, whether they want to go and get a senior player or they reckon Doak, right, he's ready for the first team next year. He's going to be the next Trent sort of breaking through into the team, making this big impact, or next Elliott. But yeah, when you've got those 3 players competing for places, it's mouthwatering. It's what we've been looking at Man City and going, why don't Liverpool have that added bit of quality? You're going to have a world-class player on the bench. And whether that's Nunez down the middle or Nunez on the left or Nunez on the bench, same with Gakpo, same with Diaz. Liverpool maybe at times were too predictable. You can name what their strongest starting 11 was, and all these players are back. No, you can't.
Yeah. At least with that point, though, he doesn't. There's less pressure with Diaz now, isn't there? You know what I mean? Whereas a few months ago, we might have been desperate to see him back in the side. You've now got players who've come into form or look more settled in this team, and it takes the pressure off the player. It takes the pressure off Klopp as well, because he's got so many other options.
Yeah, I mean, I was making this point on our academy show yesterday that Liverpool's summer rebuild is going to be in the midfield and the defence. There might not be a budget to get a Firmino replacement in. And do they actually need a Firmino false 9 replacement? Because maybe what they need is a winger, bring Ben Doak in, Cade Gordon. I mean, with Luis Diaz as well, if he has lost that little bit of pace, because it's a big knee injury he's had, was it knee or hamstring or something, he's going to probably lose a yard of pace on it. Maybe he can form into that number 10 false 9 role that we've seen Cody Gakpo playing, because Diaz certainly has the skill set for it. If he loses a yard of pace, that might be a better opportunity for him. But yeah, interesting stuff. Hopefully he can, as Theo said, get a nice pre-season under his belt and be eased back into action. I think that's definitely the best course of action for him. But something else we'll move on to now. We've got Beth, our women's football expert, with us. Let's do a little bit of Liverpool's women's team. Lost to Arsenal at the weekend, didn't they, Beth? I mean, sort of an expected result, but it's not been an ideal couple of weeks for the Reds in the WSL, has it?
No, it's been tough for them, really. I mean, in early February, it sort of looked they were in sort of touching distance of safety, really. They had a good win over Reading, and then they had to go and play Leicester, who are bottom of the league. Leicester came to Prenton Park, and you're thinking if they win that one, then they probably are safe. If not mathematically, then certainly in terms of the confidence and psychologically where it'll put them, it would have been a huge win. And unfortunately, they lost that game very narrowly, 1-0 defeat to Leicester. And they were sort of denied the chance to bounce back from that straight away because of the international break. They've had nearly a month without a competitive fixture, which is a really, really long time, obviously, in football. And then they came back from that in midweek against Arsenal, and it was a really tough ask, for any side to go to Arsenal and try and win. I think it's something like 13 months Arsenal are unbeaten at home, so it was always going to be difficult, and it was sort of exacerbated further by the fact Matt Beard was without 7 of his senior players. A bit of an injury crisis going on at the moment, seems to be not just linked to the men's team but to the women's team as well. But so they've struggled with injury. But a big opportunity for them to bounce back this weekend against Tottenham. Spurs beat them 1-0 when they played them away earlier in the season. But they've lost their last 8 league games and they're currently below Liverpool in the table. So it's a real chance for Liverpool to sort of make a bit of a statement and really distance themselves from that relegation conversation, because they've got some really tough games toward the end of the season. And I suppose the last thing that they want is to be going into that final day against Manchester United, who beat them 6-0 in January and needing to get a result against them. So I think it's time now for Liverpool to really sort of show what they can do and get out of that relegation dogfight, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a massive game for them, isn't it? Are you confident they will stay up there? Because I think it's only one team goes down, doesn't it? So, I mean, is there a chance they do go down, or does this weekend really decide that, basically, given their tough run in?
I think, it's not going to be completely decisive this weekend. There's still plenty of football left to play. And I do think when you look at the teams in and around Liverpool, there's worse teams. There's worse teams in terms of form and in terms of the squad in general as well. So I think Liverpool will be safe, but then there is only 5 points separating Liverpool in 8th and Leicester at the bottom. So, that's 1 or 2 results going for or against you, and you can find yourself in really murky waters, really. So I think a win this weekend would sort of allay fears of relegation a little bit. But I do think they'll be okay either way. But they, as I said, they don't really want to be taking it into those last few games of the season, to decide where they're going to end up.
Yeah, fingers crossed they get the result they need and hopefully establish themselves as a side in the WSL for years to come. And with that, then we'll move on back to the men's team and to our team selector. Rich, I'll come to you first. Alisson will undoubtedly be between the sticks, won't he? But who's going to be in your back four for this one against Bournemouth? I mean, I was chatting off air, one of my Welsh favourites, Kiefer Moore. He didn't start against Arsenal. Maybe he's in line for selection against Liverpool. Is there any case for putting in a Nat Phillips or a Matip against Kiefer Moore if he starts? Or are you going to go the tried and trusted team that's had 5 clean sheets in the league in a row?
Well, as you've kind of dropped some sort of hints about my age, Patrick, earlier in this pod, I'll stick with an old adage, which is you're only as good as your last game. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I just don't see any cause for any sort of engineering here at all, really. So Alisson in goal, Trent right back, Canate, Van Dijk and Andy Robertson across the back. So that looks pretty much what I'd like to see. And it's good enough for me.
Theo, how about yourself? I mean, it's going to be a pretty physical battle, I think, isn't it? They're also a dangerous side from set pieces, Bournemouth, aren't they?
I'd be surprised if Nat Phillips played, considering he's not been trading. I imagine he's injured again. He's had a few knocks, hasn't he, here and there? I saw one there, they're not really saying it in press conferences, but I'd imagine he's sidelined at the moment. And why are you bringing up Kiefer Moore? You got big Dom Solanke there, former Liverpool cult hero we could be talking about. Klopp was delighted to see him.
Feel free to, Theo.
There's not really much I can say, to be honest. But, in the mix zone, Klopp, after the 9-0, sprinted after him, had a nice little catch-up with Dom Solanke, so I'm sure they'll have a nice little reunion of Vitality as well. But yeah, back four is going to be the same, isn't it? It's not really anyone you want to throw in there. Simicast as a left field shout, just because he did so well against Wolves, and you can rotate those left backs and know the quality is just going to be as good. But Andy Robertson had his performance of the season against United. It depends how much of an eye you've got on Real Madrid. But they've got a nice little gap between the two games, so that I don't see too many reasons to change it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only main cause, I think, for changes, isn't it, Beth? I mean, if you want to talk us through your back four, do you have one eye on Real Madrid? And then if you also want to go into your midfield as well after that?
Yeah, I agree with the other two. I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think if there was maybe a 2-goal deficit, maybe you'd be looking at that Real Madrid game as potentially, they could come back. And, I hope I'm proved wrong and Liverpool do mount another historic comeback in the Champions League. But I'm very doubtful that will happen, regardless of what 11 they feel when they travel to Spain, because a 3-goal lead at home against Real Madrid, and we've seen how dangerous they are on the counter attack. I think that's going to be really difficult to overturn. So I think Liverpool just need to go as strong as possible now in the league, and certainly with the back four, I'd stick with the same as United, and then in midfield I'd probably go, as you know, I can't pronounce his name, Stefan, we'll call him. I'd probably go him and Henderson. And then it's whether you have Harvey Elliott in or whether you bring Fabinho in. I think I'd probably bring Fabinho in, actually. I think he's looked sort of more back to his old self, not completely, but definitely improved. So yeah, I'd go those three in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, as you alluded to in one of your previous answers, actually, a bit of a selection headache, as Beth demonstrated there. It's quite tough. I'm thinking in myself, I'm not sure which three I'd choose in the midfield. Who are you going to go for in yours?
There is an argument, isn't there, for perhaps leaving Fabinho or Henderson out with one eye on Real Madrid. But it's really down to which game you put more importance on. And I would personally put more importance on this game against Bournemouth than I would against Real Madrid. I think it's highly unlikely that Liverpool will be able to overturn this result against Real Madrid. If they do, I'll come on blood red next week in a full wetsuit with snorkel.
Someone clip that.
Yeah, you can have that out of there if you can. That's how certain I am that Liverpool won't be able to overturn it. I just think it's a bridge too far this time. Watch, they're going to win 7-0 now. So I tempted to bring Bajcetic back in, but I've already kind of set in my mind that I was really, really impressed with Elliott against United. I did not expect him to deliver what he did actually, which I'm very pleased about, and that these players need to be rewarded. So I would just stick with those three: Fabinho, Henderson, and Elias.
Yeah, I think that might be a sensible call. So much negativity, though, ahead of the Bernabeu match. I mean, I'm, for one, am believing in it. I think they can do it. Get 1-0 up early, score a second half, get a late third, take it to extra time. You never know. Theo, do you believe as much as me? And then also, if you want to talk us through your midfield, and then who you're going to pick in the attack as well.
I don't believe at all. Being fully pessimistic about that one. If it was at Anfield, yes, anything's possible at Anfield. But whatever Liverpool fans say about Anfield, Real Madrid fans say about the Bernabeu. So when you've won, 14 European Cups and they've won it the way they do, it's probably a step too far. But having said that, I do think I'd make a change in midfield just to rotate it up a little bit. I know there's the argument for sticking with what's worked, but when you've got this group of 4 players and 2 of them have been a bit fragile for form this year, you might as well protect them a little bit, keep them fresh. It's just which one of them do you want to keep fresh? Elliott, as Rich said, he was superb against United. He had a little spells in the out of the team, out of midfield, and he looks like it's been the making of him. That he's back to that form we saw him in probably before the ankle injury last year. And I think he's going to be crucial against Real Madrid because he's just going to go relish it, isn't it? Play at the Bernabeu, no fear at all, pressing against the likes of Luka Modric. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing. But I'd play him against Bournemouth. And then it's Fabinho or Henderson drop out because Bajcetic can come back in. I'm leaning towards Fabinho can drop out with Bajcetic as the 6 and Henderson as the more advanced one. And that's partly because Fabinho, against his former club in Real Madrid, if he is at his absolute best, that's the smallest chance Liverpool have got. If he is all over that midfield, Liverpool have got a chance. We've not seen that enough from him this year. So I'll rest his legs for this one, just in case of a miracle, but I won't be holding my breath.
Yeah, I think that's the midfield I'd go for as well, to be honest. This might be a bit of a risk playing 2 youngsters in Bajcetic and Elliott at Bournemouth, but I think they'll have enough quality to, overrun that Bournemouth midfield you said, and then the attack as well, Theo. It's an interesting one. I mean, Beth, who are you going to go for in your front 3? I mean, is there a case for Roberto Firmino? Some nice words from Jurgen Klopp today in his press conference. Are you going to give Bobby a chance, or are you going to stick with a tried and tested 3 who was so good against United?
Yeah, go on. I'll mix it up a little bit and bring Bobby back in. Obviously got that goal, didn't he, against United, and looked sharp when he came on. So I think maybe give one of Nunez or Gakpo a rest. Maybe give Nunez a rest, and no, I changed my mind. Give Gakpo a rest, and obviously he can come on then if things aren't going Liverpool's way. I'm going to go for Firmino through the middle, Nunez on the left, and Salah on the right.
Very interesting one. I kind of talked you into that answer. I mean, Rich, who's going to be in your attack for Saturday?
Well, Mohamed Salah's in after that absolutely outstanding performance against United. That kind of gave me a good reminder of why he's been one of Liverpool's best players for so many years now. It was just vintage Salah on Sunday. Enjoyed seeing him play like that so much, and we want a bit more of that. And 2 great goals from Gakpo. I can't leave him out. Said that correct, I think. And Nunez is building, isn't he? He's building week on week and looking at more the type of player that Liverpool should be playing. I just don't see an argument for changing it. I know it's a bit boring, and I kind of said that right at the start, didn't I? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's building, and Klopp likes rhythm, doesn't he? He likes momentum. See no reason to change it. Just go with those three: Salah, Gakpo, and Nunez.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's one you start with that, and then if they're winning 60, 70 minutes in, then you make the changes and give everyone a bit of a break, for that last half an hour or so. I think that's the way I'd go about it. But anyway, let's move on then to our score predictions. Theo, you've read through the results of the past 5 years at the start of the show. How do you think this one's going to go?
I thought I'd be getting to choose an attack first, to be honest.
I wasn't sure if you did mention your attacker. Go on, Theo, sorry. Choose your front three and then talk us through your prediction.
It's not going to be very interesting because I'm leaving it unchanged as well. But would you really want to be Jurgen Klopp and having to go to one of those three? You scored at the brace against United. You were superb. We won 7-0. You dropped.
Or we're resting you for Wednesday's historic comeback turnaround at Bernabeu.
They've started 4 games together in this setup with Nunez on the left, Gakpo down the middle. And I think they've got 4 goals each. And you've got Salah with 4 assists, and Nunez has got an assist in the derby as well. It's a front three that works. And as you said, it's what they did against Newcastle as well, actually. When you've got that lead, you can take players off on the hour mark and protect legs then. So leave the front three the same. And we've always got to mention when it's Bournemouth, Salah loves scoring against them. We can say this about half the division now, I think. And now he's got, a dozen goals against United. He always seems to score against the West Hams, the Tottenhams. I think his record against City's pretty good as well. But yeah, Bournemouth, another one of those teams. I remember he's got a hat-trick at the Vitality before. So hopefully he can get a few more goals down there. So keep it as it is and hope no one gets any injuries and then they can get subbed off in the hour mark with that Bernabeu trip in sight. Let's go 2-1 on the score prediction. It's still that sleepy kickoff time. And I don't think you're going to see an emphatic thrashing 2 weeks in a row from Liverpool.
I'm surprised that you alluded there to think, a 5-0 Liverpool prediction was coming with a Salah hat-trick, but maybe not. Beth, how do you think it's going to go? Are you similarly anxious about the early kickoff time?
I am, but I'm going to try and be optimistic. I'm going to go 3-1. I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool. I don't think it'll be like a scintillating performance as it was last week, but I think they'll have enough to get the job done.
Well, Theo and Beth Rich are predicting that the run of clean sheets is going to come to an end. Are you also going to similarly predict that?
Absolutely not. Clean sheets, bedrock of everything. That's what they need on Saturday, and that's what they're going to get. And so I am going to go for 2-0 Liverpool.
Nice. I'm going to be more confident, go for 4-0 Liverpool. I think they're going to carry on that momentum and absolutely batter them. I think Bournemouth will have an eye on that, international break. I don't think they'll be caring too much about this one.
Now we know why you think you can stage a comeback at the Bernabeu.
Exactly. It's going to be a big week of goal scoring, I think, and they're going to do it on Wednesday. I've got the faith, listeners. Don't worry about the other three. I believe they'll be doing it. Hopefully we can have some positive Blood Red podcast next week, shall we say. But anyway, that'll wrap us up there for today's show. I think as our team selector showed, there's a chance for maybe some rotation. But hopefully come 2:30 tomorrow, Liverpool can be enjoying a place in the top 4 of the Premier League for at least half an hour, I suppose, maybe more. Spurs still up against Forest. Let's hope the Reds can keep that place in the Champions League positions. Thanks so much to everyone for watching and listening along to us. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at the Blood Red channel so you don't miss any of our content. And of course, subscribe to us whichever platform you get your podcasts from so you don't miss any of our daily episodes. But for now, from myself, Patrick Smith, Theo Squires, Beth Lindop and Rich Garnett, thank you so much for joining us and we'll catch you again soon.